No, I haven't ever repeated any of this message. However, one thing clear is, Joe Biden in an interview with CBS Laura O'Donnell, who actually hosts and moderates the CBS Evening News in the 60 Minutes. Joe Biden clarifies his own firm stance on judicial impartiality. Instead of actually siding with the left wing, he really likes to suppress the yearning for blue wave in the court system because he is not interested in packing the court with the like-minded judges. He actually knows sounds of the very seriousness, saying that if he gets elected within the 180 days, he's going to create a constitutional panel or a constitutional committee devoted to analyzing the judicial system intended by the founding fathers, upholding their own principles. That's what he likes to do. However, this panel is likely to be filled up with people from both sides of the political aisle. It means whoever actually, sounds, whoever really, I would rather say that these, justices or judges or legal minds who might practice their viewpoints in accordance with originalists or even reformists. Doesn't matter. The both sides are likely to be scouted to stack up this legal panel devoted to the analysis of the Constitution and the court system if he gets elected. I have never actually repeated anything. This could actually survive the throughout of Joe Biden's presidency. His intention is, when it comes to nominating the courts, judges, and justices, eventually filling up the judicial benches, one principle should never be breached. There should be commitment to non-partisan impartiality. He intends to create a firewall that might minimize political wind, shaping the very organ that is supposed to be neutral and apolitical. That's what it is about. What this is about, there was a one person who just actually who just briefly broached issue. This person clarifies that the Amy Coney Barrett case is also shameful, as well as the Merrick Garland's case was, because both sides have played a political football. Political football means here it's really a tug of war. If there is any type of vacancy caused by a sudden death of justice, then they're desperate to exercise their political power by scrambling available forces to fill up this vacancy as soon as possible. There is no compromise. They're dying to select any nominee who could actually survive the inquiry and confirmation hearings, then they would actually fast track this confirmation. This is really the mindset expected from both sides of the party. There is no exception. Then this type of ugliness eventually taints the fundamental nature of the core system, which was supposed to be separated from the political landscape in the land. That's what probably the framers wanted to witness, because they spent a whole lot of time defending and advocating the separation of powers and the checks and balances by keeping the expansion of one institution in check. However, the very threat coming from the legislative as well as the executive branch to ruin the impartiality and the neutrality and the probity of the judicial system then that would be so disastrous if this would be realized. Think about it. However, Guy Benson, the host of the Guy Benson Show, who sounds really like political fringe and a fanatic from the right side, he actually mentions this. Democrats who were so aggressive in the past court packing project, they're really the one who used to be very belligerent to wage this ideological battle. Because Democrats, they were like crusaders defending the liberal agendas. Whenever there was a vacancy, they even dying to wage another cultural war in defense of the liberal agendas like the Roe v. Wade or contraception or gay rights movement. These type of people were presenting themselves as martyrs, willing to sacrifice their own lives in defense of the liberal sanctity. Now they were actually being in a losing position. Once, the Democrats would not enjoy the boons coming from the current political battle, all of a sudden they do a about face. They just simply do 180 to introduce this type of radical agenda. But there was another person who really appreciated this voice. Because at least, amongst legal scholars throughout the nation and even in the legal community, filled up with the people practicing the law, they were very disgruntled with the notion of having the political jiu-jitsu like what we are witnessing in the Senate right now. Because, the Senate Judiciary Committee is on the face of wrapping up the Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation, and in the coming week, there will be the voting procedure on the Senate floor, the entire floor. That's what has been just said. However, just like, what Joe Biden mentions, whenever there is a void and a vacancy and a vacuum, there's always a political football. Whoever actually is in charge of the majority, Senate majority, or whoever hosts the president of the United States, this, ruling party has a greater chance to manipulate the system or abuse their power, even at the cost of trespassing on or infringing on the very sanctity of the judicial branch. The adjudicating power of judges would be significantly politicized because of a blow coming from politics. The role politics all of a sudden dominate the very dimension of the judicial branch. And that's not right. Ever since, Madison versus Marbury versus Madison that has given the greatest judicial review power to the Supreme Court. This type of harassment cannot be tolerated easily. That's really the argument. Joe Biden's suggestion is very simple. He's been willing to open up the door to legal minds from both sides of the political aisle. Wherever these legal minds are situated on the political spectrum, he would be willing to pay attention to their minds within the 180 days in an effort to break down and analyze the founding document, which would delineate the very intended purpose of the founding fathers regarding the core system. He wants to get closer to the core system purported by the founding fathers. In that way, he would probably move on to create a permanent panel. So this could no longer be a political football tossing back and forth to have this rough teeth bouncing fight whenever there is a vacancy. Or even there could have a reform on the Supreme Court nomination and confirmation, or even the tenure. Any type of discussion would be possible based upon this research conducted by the political and non-political judicial panel composed of bipartisan legal scholars scouted from prestigious universities like University of Chicago or University of Michigan or even Harvard University. University of Chicago hosts many of conservative legal intellects like Pritchett. But Notre Dame also flaunts off many of conservative scholars. It's true, I'm not lying. The intellects, or even cerebrals, those professionals who've been dedicated to analyzing and construing the founding documents in alignment with the core system. These people are going to be scouted and recruited to fill up the position for a so-called commission or panel devoted to core system study. Study means the scrutiny, because Joe Biden really wants to know the true nature of the core system by paying attention to both the sides of explications. Not just the Republicans' viewpoints, where he just not just really wants to carry the blue torch by creating the bluish wave thriving in the core system, which sounds really like core packing, completely stacking up the core system with the Democratic-minded judges like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. These type of ideological battle should be minimized. That's his viewpoints. He just really wants to create a firewall, which would possibly crack down on the ideological flames. Because, sometimes the people really need to recognize the generation lasting consequences and ramifications coming from a landmark Supreme Court case. This could have changed the lifetime of many different people or contour of the nation's future in the political or socio-political ideologies. So Joe Biden's plan is very simple. When he actually had an interview with Rosie O'Donnell, and it's not Rosie, Laura O'Donnell, right? I kind of forgot her name. Miss O'Donnell is a CBS Evening News host and also a contributor of the 60 Minutes. This edition of the 60 Minutes is going to be on TV this Sunday. If you ever wanted to actually know more about what's going on and what's going to happen, so you have to pay attention to this upcoming episode of CBS 60 Minutes, because this is really a very exclusive opportunity to hear about Joe Biden's core provision, because he's going to lay down a plan. This is part of his grandiose blueprint for core reform and the criminal justice reform, so you should never miss it. 60 Minutes is the United States broadcasting system called the CBS's news magazine, which delivers a very omnibus type of comprehensive analysis on a variety of social issues. I mean, it's very interesting if you ever actually notice that he is going to bring about the real change. Joe Biden's idea is very simple. He is going to offer a new panorama. That means party line blurring, bipartisanship is a very fundamental, that defeating this nonpartisan panel based upon the analysis conducted by this group, so-called the Constitutional Commission, he is going to envision the very directions taken for the sake of the core and the judicial branch's future. This is really a blueprint. However, he's not going to be a crusader and pioneer, harbingering the inundation of blue waves. No, he's not going to be the Democrats' president only. He's willing to represent all different voices by gathering thoughts from right-minded judges or scholars from the right-wing universities. He would actually pay attention to, or he would lend ears to, these type of moderate conservatives or even radical who would actually read the presumably best intentions of the framers who authored the Constitution. Once they envisioned the nation's court system, what kind of thoughts they could have had. These are really the challenges so daunting that could only be done once we are scouting these brilliant legal professionals and letting them put their heads together in search of the truth by getting one heartbeat closer to the founding fathers. That's really the intention. How can we even actually read what had been intended by our framers? That's really the question. And Joe Biden refuses to wear the blue mask on his face because he's going to be the president of the United States. He's not going to be the president of the Democratic Party. That's really the argument. He refused to, or he declined to, toy with the court packing by stacking up the seat with Democratic-oriented or Democratic-leaning judges or prosecutors who might actually serve the greatest interest on behalf of the Democratic Party. That's not his viewpoint. He actually, at least at this moment, projects very serious notion for creating a so-called Constitutional Commission or a panel from both sides. It means from the Republican-minded conservatisms or conservatives or Democratic-sounded liberals. So once this party line blurring collaboration were to be realized, then there could be a greater justice that could have better served the people in this nation in alignment with the Constitution, and that's a viewpoint. Think about it. Whenever there is a void, a vacancy in the Supreme Court, every single time the sitting president wants to wage a cultural war, as if someone who's been at the vanguard of the crusader, who just wants to bear the cross by scrambling all the possibility. Because he or she really wants to mobilize the resources in defense of the ideological dogma cherished by his party. That's really the viewpoints. That type of convention so far ruined the jurisprudence and judicial temperance of the legal system, because that truly swayed the pendulum that was supposed to maintain the neutrality and the impartiality. Because it just actually right now, even just what's actually going on inside the Congress, ACB's case, the Amy Coney Barrett's case also monitored this type of political upswing that could exercise the greatest power to sway the judicial philosophy that was supposed to be persistent regardless of political landscape or political climate in the United States. There should be a much greater separation between these two different divisions. But right now, in reality, we are actually losing this argument, losing this ground. That means this type of argument is no longer that persuasive as it loses its ground. It's not actually gaining its momentum to expand its influence. That's the problem. We need to actually find another measures or even actually build upon a mechanism that could have better realized this philosophy institutionalized by our framers. That was really the assertion by Joe Biden, not me. In that way, he's been mulling over the possibility of this judicial construction. It could actually be once in a lifetime event, or it could actually have longevity. I don't know. But he's been actually thinking about the construction of a judicial panel whose sole purpose is analyzing and delving into the very system of the judicial branch. Those judges, especially, we have lots of problem with appellate courts. Because appellate court judges are likely to be appointed by President of the United States. That means the confirmation procedures and hearings are likely to be done by the Congress. That means the judicial and the executive branches are going to share their powers in the confirmation of a judicial branch's gatekeeper. That means there had been an unnecessary politicization which would reshape the nation's judicial guidelines through the landmark cases. That would exercise generational influence on everyday life of Americans. I have never actually missed anything.